Hey, we live?
Looks like it.
You guys hear me? Billy, Leo?
Yes.
Good. All good here.
All right. Welcome to Chopping It Up. Today, I'm blessed to have a great partner with us today, KPMG. We'll get into KPMG in a minute. But this is another session of our Chopping It Up where we like to just get right to the point. We like to share the blueprint, what's working out there in the industry today. Of course, everybody knows a big initiative for our customers is to increase revenue, but also to optimize spend. And no better firm to have join me today than KPMG. Without further ado, I'll turn things over to Billy. She can introduce herself, and then we'll go to Leo, and then we'll chop it up.
All
Billy?
right. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Eric. Billy Akaola here. I'm a managing director with KPMG out of our Chicago hub. I'm our private equity channel leader and supplier diversity leader for our procurement and outsourcing advisory practice. On to you, Leo.
Awesome. Leo Dalmali here, partner at KPMG. I've done everything in procurement. So you name it, I've done it, from sourcing, tech implementation, CLM, SRM, including blockchain, managed services, COE. Happy to be here and looking forward to chopping it up.
Let's go. So, I just got back from a conference out in Arizona, and I'll share one story with you, but it's, the cliche is there's, we've never met a procurement team that's overstaffed, right? We've never met a procurement team that has all the expertise. And we never met a procurement team that actually has, I shouldn't say never has. A lot of procurement teams don't have, we'll call it relevant data to even start to begin a thesis, right? So let's just share with the audience today, what type of procurement services the KPMG offers, and who is the clientele that you guys are offering these services to? I'll pass it over to whoever wants to take that question.
I can start, Billy. So as you can imagine, KPMG has nearly 300,000 practitioners globally, covering all different types of competencies. So tax, audit, supply chain, and of course, procurement. We pride ourselves in bringing a holistic view to organizations. And Eric, our clients come to us with a number of different challenges, whether it be cost cutting, preparing for a divestiture, looking to outsource agreements, driving better relationships with suppliers, managing risk, and in some cases, developing a tax efficient procurement organization or even building centers of excellence. All that being said, we like to follow the trends because, the trends in the marketplace drive what our clients are really, really wanting to get at. And as of right now, our clients are laser focused on two things. One is being focused on optimizing a user experience. So things not necessarily changing, but also driving savings to the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add in there. So with my focus on private equity, partnering and serving PE, both middle market, upper middle market, and the mega funds. Same thing, my clients are very much focused on optimizing the assets that they have on hand and making them more valuable. I think most of us know that deals are down 22% since last year. So the large focus is really, how do I improve my procurement functions or create more value across my portfolios, whether that be, cost takeout, quantifiable hard dollar savings through vendors, renegotiations, contract rebalancing. I'm seeing a lot in the carrier logistics transportation space. I think we know that we're over capacity, so the time is right to strike to be able to rebalance those type of agreements, as well as labor. So those are just some that are coming, top of mind for a lot of our clients. And I'd say that for our non-PE as well.
No, well said. I think our audience needs to, and you heard it firsthand here, the term rebalance is so critical to the success of companies, right? You might be in a contract today that doesn't look good. It might have looked good 2 years ago, but you have 3 years left of it. That doesn't mean you can't rebalance that agreement. And those are across multiple different categories. And we're going to talk about categories for a minute, but KPMG gets involved. They do a quick analysis, and the client says, "Okay, I'm looking for some quick outcomes, Leo and Billy."
Yep.
What are some of the areas the categories that you guys would kind of point at first, assuming, okay, let's say all data sets are the same, which we know that's not the case across all industries. But what are some of the common categories where you find that low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, I could jump in first on this one.
Sure.
So I think the quick hits are certainly through our partnership with your team, Eric, with Green Cabbage, right? When I think about indirect technology, and basically speed to value. So hard dollar savings, because we have access to tier one pricing across 13,000 suppliers at the SKU level. That's tangible. It's quick, 40, 72 hour turnaround. That's what we're really seeing a lot of. I think another area I did mention is, labor. When we look at labor rates, right, things kind of got a little bit, depending on your point of view, there were certainly impacts, right, with COVID, where we saw mass changes between attrition, retention, individuals. So now what we're looking at is rebalancing just our labor rates as well. So those are a couple that are I would say, that are top of mind.
And Billy, to add on to that too, it's not all roses, right? I mean, I think a lot of our clients today feel stuck, right? They've been in agreement with a supplier for a number of years. They need to take the price increase because the cost of the switching cost alone is, astronomical. So I think it's interesting, right? I think in this dynamic, because you've got clients that have agreements where they don't want to change. They have the best product or the best service that's for them, but what they need is better pricing, better SLAs, or even the right governance structure to support that. And I think that's where we help a lot of our organizations or our clients out, in those areas. And to Billy, to your point, I mean, I think what's hot in the market. I mean, hot in the market right now is those agreements where you don't have to change a supplier, because changing an MRO supplier from Grainger to Fastenal requires a number of change management, new catalog builds, things along those lines, possibly disruptive to your business. The focus on IT, telecom, SaaS agreements, travel, contingent labor, Billy, you mentioned, absolutely. And even some cases benefits. I mean, benefits, near and dear to everybody's heart, but there's some play there as well from a renegotiation standpoint. So I think the focus, at least what I'm seeing from my perspective, is where can you rebalance contracts and not necessarily change an incumbent supplier, but also drive better SLAs, better governance, better pricing.
Yeah, very insightful. One thing I will give a plug to KPMG, though, is it's not just about the pricing. It's about those mousetraps and those terms in the agreements that give you that next event where you have more flexibility, right? And what we're seeing in the marketplace is the suppliers want long-term engagements. Like you mentioned, Billy, or Leo and Billy, they've got the best products. They went through the heavy lifting to figure out business requirements and alignment to what products are going to serve their business the best. But it may be an issue with the contract. It may be an issue with the price. It may be an issue with a term. And what so forth. So you guys do a nice job there. So, we talk about time to value. Billy, you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up. So, what's a typical engagement look like? You're a new customer. You're not using KPMG services today. Where do you guys start? What's that engagement look like?
Bill, let me take this one.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll lead us off. So, unfortunately or fortunately, Eric, there's nothing typical about a typical engagement. We pride ourselves as being thought leaders and knowing the market. However, I would say what we typically rally around are value levers. And in today's world, the value lever that's getting the most attention is cost reduction. An example, even in the last 2 weeks, I've talked to clients and prospectives about how to drive costs out with their current suppliers without disruption in their services and while maintaining or achieving, better SLAs. Given the economic conditions, what we're seeing right now, and this is, how we're handling our clients today, is we like to be cash flow neutral to start, and then cash flow positive throughout our engagements. So what we're seeing actually from a teaming perspective is that if we can prove that out in a relatively short amount of time, and Billy, you alluded to this being speed to execution and speed to value, a lot of our clients today are reinvesting those savings into overall visibility, transparency, possibly technology, so they're not doing the same thing over and over and over again. Long story short, we start with the low-hanging fruit and we work our way to the more complicated issues and challenges.
Great. Billy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think a couple things that's been coming up a lot in just the PE world is there's typically a deal thesis, at the onset when you close on an asset. And so what's coming up a lot more now is the ability to be able to measure that. And this kind of goes along the lines with what Lee's saying. There's no typical engagement because we curate and cater and customize, that quantifiable value case kind of focus for each of our clients. But what I am seeing is, when you close on an asset, the ability to be able to take that P&L and then map it to the categories, and then that periodic review to say, okay, this is originally what the thesis was. Now we need to make sure that we can map, that the P&L to the categories from a procurement, expenditure standpoint, and then measure that over time, which I think is a very interesting kind of forward-thinking gauge on the ability to be able to avoid those mouse traps. So, as you mentioned, Eric, the holding periods, I'm seeing them, they're longer, right? Depending. There's a lot of cash tied up in the PE world because deals being down. So the ability to be able to measure and then reprioritize, what are those areas when we think about impacting, EBITDA and that bottom line.
Well, Billy, just to chime in there too, I think it's interesting because we're getting a lot more CFO attention nowadays. So, backtrack about 10 years ago, right? We're talking to the CPO, we're talking to maybe a CIO about, technology implementations, things like that. We are now at the forefront of working with CFOs all the time because that cash is so important. Driving that savings down to the bottom line is so uber important that we have to have the visibility, the transparency, and the ability to track that savings all the way to the bottom line. It's no longer success is being claimed by signing a new contract, right? Success is signing a new contract, but then seeing that, that waterfall effect and driving that savings actually down to the P&L.
No, all this is great. So Billy, I'm going to go back to you real quick. So you talk about getting involved. You guys are involved in the pre and the post sale of these targets as well too, right? Just so our listeners understand that there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into let's pull down 25 contracts to a target and let's look at MITs. We call them market intelligence thesis, and kind of what that rebalance of that spend would look like at post sale. And then we got to put the work in to get that to where that needs to be as well too. So in the terms of private equity, everything has to do with going back to multipliers and EBITDA, and that those dollars there are significant insights for these private equity, aggressive private equity companies we have out there today. Great. Let's get into a couple stories here. And then we'll have one final question because we're going to keep this within 20-25 minutes. But everyone loves stories, right? So if I'm a new client and I say, hey, give me a story, Bill, or give me a story about a client engagement that you've done over the last 6 months. Where did you start? What were the outcomes in the last 6 months? And then Billy, I'll turn it over to you on the private equity side. That sound fair?
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Good. So this may seem a little bit myopic. However, success starts with trust relationships with clients. So it takes trust, it takes empathy and teaming to let a consultant come in and say into your procurement house, right, and say, hey, you didn't save as much money as you should have in the past, and these are the reasons why. The good news is that we have a lot of great relationships with clients, but it's a little bit difficult at times to say, hey, let's take a look at some stuff. So I think the interesting thing is that leveraging the know-how that we do have, leveraging the fast acting IT, telecom, contingent labor agreements that are current in existence, we can actually take a look at those independently of, calling someone's baby ugly from a procurement perspective. A great example would be, consumer products company, that I'm dealing with had a SaaS agreement that was, over $30 million over a 3-year period. And by just looking at the contract, benchmarking it with the right information, SKU level details, we're able to find, $2.25 million of overpaying, if you would, from a particular contract. So we provide a methodology, a talk track, ways of working, how to go back to the supplier and say, hey, you know what, you might be overcharging me in a couple different areas. So partnering together with, and this is probably a little bit of a lead in, but with analytics and great methodology and know-how allows you to drive those savings. Typically speaking, I would say, on average, we're probably between 5 to 15%, without breaking a sweat, as it relates to these categories. However, given the market conditions and the pressures that we've seen and the fact that we're coming out of COVID over the last 2 or 3 years, we're seeing it's now more customary to even save 20%. So I think in that particular example, we've got, cash coming in the door on a recurring basis as a recontract has been renewed, and kind of everybody wins, right? It's, re-solidification of a supplier that you're currently using, but also driving down a new price point with better SLAs. One more I'll give to Billy, and I'll hand the floor over to you. Industrial manufacturing company was renegotiating their contingent labor contract. We were able to not only provide detailed benchmarking information, inclusive of rates, markups, and costs, which saved 6% relatively quick, but we're able to provide them and eliminate co-employment risk. So as the laws and things are changing today, it's many of our clients have a co-employment risk in a number of different states and countries that are out there. So identifying those risks that are out there sometimes far exceed even the price that you're actually going to pay. So I think understanding all of that and being able to present back with, to our clients that not only is there a cost savings potential from a rate and markup perspective, but there's a risk that we're eliminating as it relates to co-employment, and get kind of the regulatory ramifications solved before they actually happen. It's kind of a 2-for-1, if you would.
Awesome. So an example that comes top to mind is I have a client, and being PE can't divulge too much, so I'll paint a picture. They're contemplating selling an asset, and for this client, this is PE at the holding company level. So more of that financier position, doesn't really have a procurement operations function within their team. So effectively requested that we go and do a gap analysis essentially, and identify quantifiable savings or value across their contracts, vendor spend, both indirect and direct categories. There's also operational supply chain gap assessment as well, in terms of the logistics, the freight contracts, and the warehousing, and the utilization of space. This is a scenario where they're heavily space constrained, and the logistics are quite challenging to be able to get product to the asset. And so we went out there, spent, say, a week, boots on the ground, a lot of fun, long hours, a lot of walking, all that, a lot of back of the house reviews. And what we were able to come out of that is several, I'd call them mini business cases that we put in a prioritized roadmap that are actionable. And many of them are underway. But an interesting aspect of that we also added in was doing some rapid benchmarking using Green Cabbage's platform. And that actually ended up not only covering our fees to do the assessment, but by a multiple of 10. So it really showed not only did they get their roadmap, quantifiable business cases for that they could use as an agenda to help increase the value of the asset, but also it really demonstrated just that teaming and partnership that Leo's talking about, where we were able to work hand in hand with the client, and really identify hard dollar savings to really demonstrate the value of moving forward on some of these recommendations, but also just the value of the exercise. Because I think those that have gone through an assessment or gap analysis, it can be, it can take time away from, the business, typically the management team and all that. So it's really important that we're very, focused on how we're using their time as well. So yeah, this was it's a great example of us finding all the levers as well as working jointly together with them.
The great stories. It goes back just while you're talking, both of you guys were talking, I'm thinking about how much in the last 5 years or a little bit more than that, innovation of market intelligence has really become critical, and how real relevant market intelligence can accelerate a lot of these types of theses. And so if I'm a consultant, right, and I want to really understand what the baseline looks like or where we're at, and market intelligence in our view at Green Cabbage is just not, I heard a couple times on your micro skew pricing. That's great. But again, I know KPMG is out to secure the best contracts for their clients. So to me, market intelligence is also business and legal terms, and those mousetraps that, whether you're a cloud provider, a telco provider, or data center, labor, whatever the case may be, they're everywhere, right? Why are the mousetraps in contracts? It creates another compelling event, right? So to de-risk those things. So let's talk about market intelligence. How's market intelligence changed KPMG's view and approach to your consultative approach to your clients today? So Billy, you want to start first, and Leo, we'll go to you.
Sure.
Sounds good. I think I talked a lot about, the use of data, or we say market intelligence, and some of the examples I've shared. But to add on, I think the biggest shift that I'm seeing in our approach is like leading with the data. So I think there's like kind of a traditional approach that I've seen, over the course of my career, where it's a series of interviews. We create data through surveys, but there's certainly, when I look at things like, generative AI, or just our toolkit and the ability to be able to do things such as like, process mining, go in, gather the data, come up with a hypothesis and inform what's happening within the current state of their business. That has certainly been a large accelerator, coupled, of course, with interviews, workshops, and things like that. But what it does help is we're taking client data, we're taking their data, and then being able to map it, and you put it in a benchmarkable or baseline format, and then present it to them. And in many cases, this is the first time that clients have actually seen their data in this kind of format, where we're able to do some peer benchmarking with that as well. And then we bring that to the table when we have those discussions and really uncover, okay, where the potential value is.
Yeah, just real quick comment. We'll turn it over to you, Leo. But what you just said is exactly what we see on a daily basis. What type of data are you benchmarking this proposal, this contract towards? 9 times out of 10, it's their own data, or it's a survey-based data, which is not, obviously we all know that that's not accurate, but it's definitely changing the way people think, and the outcomes are happening. Like a procurement lifecycle on an ERP platform, as an example, minimum 6 months. You guys agree 6 months, could be longer?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We see clients, some of the largest clients in the world, getting there in 3 months or less. Right? Think about the amount of time reduction that you're saving, because the answers to the tests are in that data set. Right? And some of the largest companies in the world may think they're getting the best deal, but we do a lot of within 22,000 MITs in the last 12 months here. I can tell you that's not true. But it's the data set is really it's the baseline. You guys use the word baseline, and I love it. It's the baseline of what deal you think you're getting versus what the market is receiving that's out there today. Leo, I'll turn it over to you. We got about 3 minutes left.
Cool. So Eric, I think your word is perfect, right? In the past, there was benchmarking, right? And that was, everybody had benchmarking, 20 different companies out there could, throw 3 to 5% on the wall and call it a real number. Today's world is market intelligence, and I think that's the big difference, right? Because if you have the ability to get that information at the SKU level information on what exactly you should be paying, that's totally game changing.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, over the last like 5 years or so, there's a shift from standardized benchmarking to this market intelligence information that's out there that, when coupled with a firm like KPMG, you make 1 + 1 = 3, right? Because you have the market intelligence, you bring in the better mousetrap, as you said, Eric, and you can really go after these contracts and agreements to benefit both not only the client of ours, but also the supplier that we're dealing with. Because you have better terms, you have better conditions, you understand each other from an SLA perspective, and you're driving the best pricing.
Yeah, well said. I think I'll follow up with that with one quick thing. So I just got back from a conference, and I asked the question to 15 CPOs in a roundtable. What's your biggest challenge that you face right now? And they all said it in a different way, but it all came back to predicting what my costs are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a term out there that I think I'm proud of to say that my team, they innovate a lot of things, but it's that renewal reduction buffer, right? So if you don't know what a renewal reduction buffer is, you can reach out to Green Cabbage. We'll share that with you. But essentially, it's going to be able to forecast you. It's not about getting the best contract right now. It's about getting that best contract and setting up for the next contract as well. Because it might look great, but then you have these, I'll call them the niche cloud providers as one example, many of examples, but they're going to get you that 22% at that renewal. They're going to get you more than 22%. We have another world of technology acquisitions going on with 3 or 4 large private equity companies. Increases we see are hundreds of percent. We see offshore, onshore rates. Billy mentioned COVID. Someone might have been living in New York City, and one of my colleagues, Pat, talks about they moved to Hoover, Alabama. Well, they're getting paid the same rates. The cost of living is a little different than Hoover, Alabama. I've never been to Hoover, Alabama. Have you guys been there?
No.
I presume that the cost is different. But listen, this has been a great session. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. So we're going to have this repost on LinkedIn. At the bottom of the repost, you'll have Leo and Billy's LinkedIn accounts. So if you have any questions, reach out to them, follow them on there. And we really appreciate your time here today and the partnership as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Take care.